As a psychology major and as someone who used to be a mental health counselor for kids, something I want to give Stranger Things props for is that they don't infantilize the issues that kids go through as they age. Let's start with Mike Wheeler. He's probably one of the most divisive characters in the whole show, but I think he's the most brilliantly written because he's a very realistic depiction of how trauma and PTSD can corrupt a child's coming of age. Yes, he's a bit insufferable by season 4, but it's not because he's a bad person, it's because he's gone through so much and he doesn't know how to handle it, which is very valid, very real. Dustin starts off as a pretty happy-go-lucky character until he sees Eddie die in his arms, and there is no doubt in my mind that season 5 is going to place a heavy emphasis on how he grapples with grief. Eleven probably has my favorite character arc out of everyone. She starts off being emotionally abused and manipulated by a mad scientist, and she's sequestered from the rest of society. Then when she finally escapes, she's straddling this line between assimilating into society but also retaining her autonomy. Simultaneously, she navigates an identity crisis and she has to learn how to resolve it on her own, independent of the men in her life, and find inner self-worth. Her brother Will goes missing and people assume that it's a hate crime and that it was deserved because he's gay. He gets relentlessly bullied at school and unfortunately comes to believe that he's undeserving of love and he's a mistake. I think Will's arc in particular is a really powerful example of how societal norms can affect a child's feelings of self-worth. Then we have Max, who has a very complicated relationship with her brother, and she has to reconcile her grief over losing him with also her simultaneous hatred of him because of their very tumultuous relationship. In the same season, Lucas is going through what I think is a very relatable experience, probably for a lot of people of color, which is that he's seeking social acceptance and popularity, probably in part due to the racism that he faces every single day. Meaning, if he's popular, that can mitigate some of the prejudice he faces from his classmates. My point is that every single one of these characters is given a very complex arc, and given that we live in a society that tends to downplay the issues children go through, I really appreciate that. I know that Stranger Things gets a lot of hate for the fact that it took 10 years for 5 seasons to come out, and from the fan perspective, I get why that's so frustrating, but in my opinion, that longitudinal perspective is actually a strength that augments its storytelling, because I don't know that they could have pulled off the kinds of storylines and the complexity and the depth of them in a shorter time period.